All right, so this is chapter 45, section 4, and we'll be talking about the integumentary system. Think of the integumentary system as your skin, hair, and nails. It's a system that covers the outermost portion of your body. And here we go. The skin is composed of two layers, the epidermis and the dermis. Epidermis, epi means surface or outermost. Like the word epic means it's much better than average, right? And the epidermis it gets its tough qualities from this protein called keratin. This protein, when you fall and scrape your leg or whatever, it's not like it scrapes all your skin off to the bone. And that's because of the keratin. Also, when you cook meat if you get beef or whatever and you cook it, the proteins that hold it together and make it rough break down. And for us, we will also get wrinkles once our keratin starts to deteriorate some. That's something that will actually cause that. Your skin also has this pigment called melanin. Melanin determines your skin color. The more melanin you have, the darker your skin color, but it also protects the tissue layers below. So if I have darker skin color, I produce more melanin. When UV light hits my skin, it absorbs more of that UV light, and then I won't have to actually get deeper tissue layer damage. So melanin plays a role in not just skin color, but it also plays a role in your ability to protect the lower levels, the lower layers of skin tissue, so that you don't get a deeper form of cancer or something, which would be much, much worse. Now, the dermis is a innermost layer of tissue of skin that is composed of cells, and what it does is it protects the body as much as possible. You can actually see a breakdown of the dermis here. So starting on the left, you see that there's three tissue layers: the epidermis, the dermis, and the subcutaneous tissue. Now, the epidermis we talked about was the outermost layer. It's composed mostly of dead cells, and whenever you get a cut in the epidermis, usually you don't even notice it. It's like a little piece of white skin tissue. There's no melanin there, so regardless of how much melanin you have, it still would look like a little peel off of skin. Below that is the dermis, and the dermis has a lot more involved in there. We'll go through the different parts. Now, if you cut into the dermis, you'll bleed, and you'll also feel pain. Now, below that, you're past the skin now. You're into something called the subcutaneous tissue. And if you've ever had a cut that's deep enough where you see a yellow globular structure, that's actually subcutaneous level. That's fat. And that means you're through the skin, and now you're into the deepest of deep tissues. And those are the layers that from the outermost layer of the epidermis to the dermis, which both comprise your skin, and then into your subcutaneous tissue. Now, looking at the top, going from left to right, you see a pore. Now, the pore is an opening in the epidermis where, in this case, sweat can come out. If you remember when we talked about sweat, sweat was actually watered down urine. You take the actual urea, which is the salt of urine, and if you water it down and add some of the waste products, you make sweat. So that it still remains true. And for those of us who have sometimes get our pores clogged, we will get a pimple at one of those pores, and that is an example of where these pores play a role. Hair follicles go through also a pore when the shaft of the hair grows out of the hair follicle. It goes through the pore and then it comes out as hair. Sometimes that hair shaft will get stuck inside. It'll kind of break off left or right, and it won't go right out of the pore for the hair. And what it'll do is it'll grow into the epidermis. That's an ingrown hair. And ingrown hairs are not just painful, they can get infected and they're problematic. So that's that. And then that's hair follicle. So going across the top, pore, hair follicle, and then hair shaft is the actual piece of hair. Now, I want you to bear in mind that hair is made of cells. Hair is not made of something else. It's made of cells. And so like things that are made of cells, they require some stuff to stay alive. So looking at on the right there, you see something that's an oil gland. The oil gland, what it actually does is it provides oil for the hair. It keeps the hair lubricated and in a good place. On the lower right, you actually see arteries and veins. If you get confused as to what's what, Arteries take blood away from the heart. Veins take blood towards the heart. So A away, arteries away. On the lower left, you have nerve cells, muscle cells, and sweat glands. Now, we talked about sweat glands a second ago, so we know what those are. They produce that waste product. It goes through the pore, and it covers your skin and cools you off. The muscle fiber, that's the muscle cells, right, that are connected to the hair follicle, give you goosebumps when they contract. So the hair follicle will push up on the skin. It'll form like a little lump almost and make your skin seem like it's got little dots on it. And that is a defense response to do a couple of things. It tends to keep your body temperature regulated, which is something that hair does. And it can also protect you from any kind of damage. Last but not least is your nerve cells, and your nerve cells play a role in helping you feel when you've something that's too hot or too cold or pain, which is also useful. Now, nails play a major role into protecting your fingers and toes. Nails grow on from their cells that produce nails, and then they're made mostly of keratin, the thing that made your skin kind of rough but doesn't let it tear off whenever you fall. And but obviously they have more keratin than your skin, and they grow on top of a nail bed. The nail bed is some supportive cells underneath. And then the idea being that they support the cells that make the nail, and together that forms like this protective structure on the top of your fingers and toes. You can also tell certain types of diseases based on what's going on with people's nails, especially as you get older. Now, hair is actually made up of cells. The shaft itself is made up of cells. It gets its coloring from the melanin that's in your skin cells, and it preserves your ability to maintain heat, so it insulates you. It keeps you from getting bacterial infections and fungal infections sometimes. So if you get like a bacteria or whatever landing on your hair instead of on your skin, it can stop you from getting that infection. And they're very well oiled to keep them somewhat soft and regulated in that way. And that's it for chapter 45.4.